hear me. Things should be working, but I just kind of want to get a check, make sure everything is doing okay here this evening. I hope everybody is having a great start to the week, and hopefully everything is streaming correctly. You can hear me all right. We're about to find out, though, if not here. Let's take a listen. Alright, I think I've got a sound check done on my own end here, and we should be okay. If you're just now joining the stream, thank you so much for being with me. This is like a Q&A update. We're kind of taking a look at what is going on with future radar, current radar, everything severe weather for tonight. We're going to kind of cover what everybody's going to be seeing through our Monday evening, through Monday night, and then as we go into Tuesday here, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about, as well as Wednesday, if anybody has any questions about that. So let's go ahead and kind of get into the stream. I appreciate Project Gladiator Weather Forecasts being with me. As always, check his channel out. Great videos and analysis, more in-depth coverage of severe weather. You've got Severe Storm Filmer. Always appreciate you checking in, and I love watching your videos. Saw all those parts of your windstorm that you had on up there in Ohio recently. But anyway, let's kind of get into the meat of this video and kind of get a little bit deeper into some of the weather content. Taking a look now, we've got some storms, producing some 1-inch hail scattered all about here. We've got Valentine, Nebraska, pushing on up here through parts of the enhanced and slight risk zones, the level 3 and level 2 zones for severe weather here in parts of the north central plains. So we've got some storms that are already firing on up along a boundary associated with a low pressure system that is basically parking itself and exiting right on out here of the Rockies, making its way on out here into the plains, and you can understandably see why we're seeing some storms fire on up where they are. We've also got some storms back on down here, not extremely impressive, but at least some 60-mile-an-hour winds and maybe some 1-inch hail possible down here closer to Altus there in southwestern Oklahoma. And Project Gladiator, love your analysis. Let's read this. The main uncertainties you have: the potential for overmixing, unsure of how much that will impact the risk for storms. Yep, totally agree with you there. And trust me, I'm sure you know just as much, if not more, about the in-depth side of the severe weather coverage here than I do. So good information there. So you can always pay attention to some of the information he's putting in the chat. But let's get into this here with my analysis on what we've got going on for this evening. First of all, I want to turn off the pesky severe thunderstorm warnings for now. Just note that if you are under an alert, to always make sure you're getting in that lowest, most interior room of your house. Even if it is just a warning for big hail and gusty winds, you never know when that can blow out a window. Some big hail, anything like that. You don't want that to be a problem for you. So let's go ahead and play out what we've got going on. And I think the models are doing a good job kind of showing us what's going on right now. And this is what the HRRR model is showing for 9 Eastern, which is essentially here 8 Central. There are those storms up there that are currently severe warned moving into parts of South Dakota, north central Nebraska. So if we're taking a look to verify whether this model is correct as I start this stream, certainly so. This model certainly is on top of where storms are now, where they're probably headed in the near future. It's also got a little bit of development there near Abilene over the next couple of hours. We'll see how that could progress here throughout our Monday, April 15th, and into the night tonight. One thing that I do want to take a quick look at here, and I actually want to go back on over to my future radar, or not future radar, I want to go on back over now to WeatherBell, and this is my trusty old WeatherBell. You can find a free trial to them down in the description. I want to play out visible satellite here over the plains because it can give us a little bit of an idea of what's going on. You can really see where the thunderstorm development has been prominent up here over parts of South Dakota, north central Nebraska as we've made our way through the late evening hours. We've also got some storms progressing through southwestern Nebraska and through western Kansas, and not necessarily storms yet, but some cumulonimbus clouds. You can definitely see some of those. I'm kind of moving around them with my cursor at this point, and you can see them going all the way on there into the northern panhandle of Texas. I think those could certainly develop more and become more robust as they head towards the northeast or into the central parts, especially of Nebraska and Kansas. And then back on down here towards parts of Oklahoma, Texas, we've got a lot of clouds and some of the storms that have been there. We'll see what other convection can develop this evening through those zones. But I digress from that. Let's get back on over to the future radar and continue playing things out as the models are showing for tonight. I think by the time we get towards around 10, 11 o'clock this evening, we will, 10, 11 Central Time, have some storms beginning to fire along this boundary here, even if the models don't necessarily have this shown. At this point, I definitely think we could have some storms moving through southwestern parts of Nebraska, central parts of Kansas, down there into west central parts of Oklahoma. But we've certainly got the biggest chance of storms in the near term anyway. Hey, Weather Center Nazario. Hey, Jog SK. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. Pleasure to see you, Weather Center. Anyway, you can see down here, these are some of these storms. We'll watch for an isolated tornado, but again, I think these elevated storms especially are going to be more capable of hail around 1 to 2 inches in diameter, and maybe locally some 2.5-inch hail as these try to push out of the slight risk zone into central parts of South Dakota this evening. But I think the potential for these bigger storms is going to come out of this cluster here, and again, remember the exact placement of these storms is not exactly correct. This is just an overview from one singular model here showing us where storms might be as we head towards midnight, 1 a.m. tonight. But it certainly looks like through Hays, Kansas, Dodge City, on up there to north central Nebraska and the Valentine, Pine Ridge area. Up there, you could be in for your second round at this point, but certainly looking like we've got plenty of storm energy that's going to help to allow for these storms to develop here. The Storm Prediction Center has a 10% chance of tornadoes with 25 miles of a point, really across this zone here. And not quite that zone, but a little bit further down here. But anyway, if I'm being honest with you, I don't know quite about the 10% zone, just because of the big hail that these storms look to form, and they look to be more linear. You don't see a bunch of supercells out here. These look like they're going to be forming line segments pretty quickly. Nonetheless, I think some isolated spin-up tornadoes will be within the realm of possibilities as these storms push into the central parts of South Dakota, back down, especially into Nebraska, Kansas. And again, if we get storms into this untapped environment here, any of these areas I'm circling where storms aren't necessarily showing as much on the models, this is as we head through the late evening today, 2, 3 a.m. even, as we go in towards our early Tuesday morning. These are going to be some of the storms that we're also going to have to track very closely. If you get a brief spin-up tornado, it could happen really quickly here in any of this little boundary. Even if there's not a storm showing on the model on this map here, certainly could see some storms fill in across this region. And again, we'll see the threat really persisting for some isolated even 2 to 3 inch hail into the overnight hours. In fact, I'm expecting isolated to even scattered events of that 2 to maybe even baseball size, that 2.5, 3 inch threshold here of hail, maybe even a little bit bigger than that, and getting on up through those baseball size range and further. So keep all that in mind if you live on up through this region in the Central Plains. By the way, our threat over here, closer to the Mid-Atlantic, that has since gone down this evening and is waning at this point. Overnight tonight, looks like storms will be continuing, and we'll get a couple rounds over here towards Sioux Falls, Sioux City, down to Omaha and Topeka in Kansas as we head through this evening. This will probably be the second round because this is your more cold front line. You got the warm front line before that. This is going to be the bigger hail threat. I think things are going to get a little bit messy to start the day tomorrow, and at the end of the day, that could kind of prohibit some of the threats as we head towards the very end of tonight and into tomorrow. And really through the day on our Tuesday, we could struggle to see big threats out of these storms just because of all of the heavy rain that's going to push through, especially during the morning hours. But we'll watch what happens there. But long story short, in all of these areas where we've got the slight risk across this region here, okay, this is where I think the storms are going to be pretty isolated, but where they develop, they're in that environment where they're going to be strong. And in fact, I can show you what I'm talking about in terms of environment here. Let's look at the storm energy, because to be honest with you, it's gone quite off the charts a little bit this afternoon. This is your CAPE in joules per kilogram. So that goes on up to 6,000 on the scale from 0 to 6,000. You can see what this model is really indicating. I mean, you can see 3,000 joules per kilogram. Oh, and I'm drawing on my OBS studio, and I'm not drawing on. Here we go. Let's bring this on over and draw on the correct thing. There we go. Is that a little bit better? 3,000, 4,000 joules per kilogram isolated of CAPE. Again, right in this environment where the Storm Prediction Center is hashing out that potential for the highest chance of tornadoes. And again, we can go on over and look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook. Look at their tornado outlook for day one, and again, you can literally see that highest storm energy is lining up with where they've got the tornado threat. So in terms of placement of this, I think they've got it right. But if they're moving anything, I think that the tornado threat should just be a bigger 5% that stretches more through this region here, arguably a little bit more like this for the 5% of tornadoes today, just because of the way the environment is setting up. And again, I think severe weather is going to be most prominent through some of these zones in isolated fashion. Where you get the severe weather, it is going to be particularly intense tonight, especially in terms of hail. Project Gladiator weather forecasts, in my opinion, I do think that the high conducive environment, but multiple uncertainties that strong tornadoes are possible. I certainly agree. I really think at this point that significant tornadoes, this 10% hatch zone, we might see an EF2 tornado tonight. But even if we did, I don't think it's deserving of this hatched, delineation from the Storm Prediction Center. And there's been a lot of these hatched risks from the Storm Prediction Center. And I've talked about this, and I'm sure Weather Center's Nazario is still in here, and he can vouch for this in the chat. I've been over on his streams in recent times, and he's talked with me some behind the scenes as well. The Storm Prediction Center is a little bit too trigger heavy on these 10% tornado risks, I think. I mean, we had a 5% tornado risk on up where we just got hail and wind in parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think they're one level ahead than they should be in most areas, and eventually this could cause, people to be less weather aware, because the higher these threats, I'm not saying there won't be this, a tornado threat where in these areas tonight. I'm not saying that, and I don't want people to let their guard down. I'm just saying there's an increased chance that more people start kind of ignoring severe threats when they're overhyped a little bit, especially by, the bigger agencies like the Storm Prediction Center. Again, am I saying that they're wrong for this 10% tornado risk? No. Am I saying I agree with it? Also, no. I don't really agree with it. I think there should be a 5% in more of a zone like this tonight, because that's where it looks like storms are going to be developing from this point onward. And maybe the 5% could go on up in some of these areas as well. I can understand that. And again, the wind outlook looks good for tonight. These storms with the Boeing segments are most likely moving out of Kansas and into Nebraska. If we go on back over to the radar Omega here, let's pull that on up and go back to the timing for tonight. I mean, you can really see there's that segment right there that they're probably highlighting for the gusty winds. I think this is probably going to be one of our more potent lines, assuming it develops, of tonight through south central parts of Nebraska, north central parts of Kansas here. And again, we could locally see maybe some 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts through that. And probably some 2 to 3 inch hail in some isolated to scattered fashion out of that as well. But if we go back on to that graphic we were just looking at, there we go. Again, this is 30% chance of severe weather within 25 miles of a point, particularly damaging winds. If we look at the hail outlook, that is what is driving today's hazards, and I do agree more with the hail outlook just because of it's uncertain where these storms are going to develop, but there's high probabilities that we've got 2-inch hail. I really like this 30% zone from the Storm Prediction Center. We'll see if we get anything down here in this part of the zone. And then we'll kind of see what happens here through parts of central Oklahoma as well. I think they could arguably have the significant hail maybe all the way through this region. So that's kind of my take on today and tonight's severe weather. I want to talk a little bit more about tomorrow's severe weather as well at this point. And if we take a look at the overall outlook, and of course if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, stop me. Here we go into tomorrow's outlook. This is one of the ones that I've been interested in kind of all along, and I want to talk about the aspects of this. Weather Center Nazario called this perfectly about, I think it was 4 days ago, maybe even 5 days ago. When the Storm Prediction Center had their outlines like this, he said they needed to move them a little bit further north on up here into parts of Iowa, parts of Missouri, into parts of western Illinois. So we're going to kind of watch what happens out of this, but the Storm Prediction Center has certainly been moving the slight risk further to the north and east, but you can definitely see where the risk is going to be highest, and it's going to be in this zone right here where we're probably going to see maybe some supercells and some line segments at multiple times throughout the day. Now, the word multiple times throughout the day also means that we're probably going to have, a little bit more of that cooling in the atmosphere because storms repetitively moving over the same areas. Wind outlook, not too bad. Tornado outlook, we'll talk about that in just a second. Here's the hail outlook. Again, something driving tomorrow's threat. Hail could happen in the morning, some 1 to 2 inch hail over this zone. So southern Iowa, northern Missouri, western Illinois, you're the bullseye for tomorrow. Getting towards Indiana and Ohio, still some storms, not quite as bad. So keep that in mind. And then in terms of the tornado outlook here, also just want to point out kind of what we're looking at with that. I'm clicking on the tornado outlook. Let's see if it can... Apparently we're not going to get the day 2 tornado outlook. Let's try and reload this one. There we go. It's my computer being finicky. There we go. All right, you can see on over here, it's southeast Iowa, getting into Missouri, western Illinois. That's where the threat for tornadoes is being elevated as we head into the day tomorrow. So let's kind of time that out. We'll get into a little bit more of the questions here in the chat in just a second if there are any. And I do see a couple of things popping on up. We'll get right into those in just a moment. But going back on over to future radar here and click on that. I want to go back to the earlier run of the HRRR because we don't quite have the kind of the mid-evening run out yet. We will get that soon. Just want to play out what it's showing. And again, as we head through these storms that are going to be making their way into parts of Iowa, Missouri, then heading into Illinois. These are going to be some of the ones that I'm going to be watching closely around the midday time frame tomorrow. We'll see how severe some of these could be, but certainly some elevated morning convection capable of especially what I'm interested in terms of hail over this region. Maybe some brief spin-up tornadoes not out of the question as well. We'll continue to watch that push from Mason City, Iowa, probably down to Waterloo, Marshalltown, Davenport, there in Illinois, to Galesburg, Quincy there in Missouri, on down through southeast Missouri as well, maybe even locally there into north central Arkansas, with especially a hail threat, maybe some isolated scattered tornadoes as the afternoon progresses on. So I want to play this out just a little bit further. Notice that line immediately tailing these initial cells. And again, I mean, they're right in the wake of them, so much so that while these would normally have probably more of an elevated tornado potential, how much of that are we actually going to have? You know, how much more of these storms are we going to have that can make their way into intense criteria right behind an earlier line to watch? So this is what we're going to be watching later tomorrow. And I think we could have some isolated tornadoes along both ends of this. But I really don't know if the 10% is necessary tomorrow either. Now, the more separate these lines are, the more individual potential they'll each have. But, I mean, at this point, this just looks like a big old mess as we head towards the end of the day and the evening tomorrow, okay? That is a big mess of storms. And with all this rain pushing out ahead of it, I mean, that's going to cool the temperature down 5-10 degrees before it even starts storming. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I do think that tomorrow's enhanced for tornadoes is a little bit more understandable with the strong tornado potential, especially with 2 rounds of cells moving on through. You could definitely get a strong tornado or 2 to make its way on through that region. So that's something we're going to be watching, and I want to kind of play on out. Let's go on over to the HRRR and play out temperatures tomorrow. I want to go back on over to a few runs ago. Let me pull it up to where, oh, you can see it now. Okay. I've been playing out models as we go into the day tomorrow with my WeatherBell slide still up. I do that all the time. That's my apologies. Okay, let's pull this up. Go to one of the earlier runs from, let's use the NAM actually for a second here. Look at temperatures tomorrow afternoon. I mean, it looks like it's going to be warm over this region, but you can almost notice some of the little bit of the 60s that kind of pop up in between lines of storms. So that's something we'll be watching. Let's read some of these comments here. Weather Center Nazaria, they've been very generous recently. Makes you wonder who's at the desk drawing the charts. Totally understand that. You can usually tell the seasoned vets producing charts versus the more green individuals. Totally agree as well. Project Gladiator says there are definitely a couple SPC forecasters that I've noticed may not be doing the best job. Is there any chance for the slight risk to extend to Madison, Wisconsin for Tuesday? Planning on seeing some likely storms tomorrow. Madison, Wisconsin for Tuesday. Let's take a look at what's going on up there. And to be honest with you, I've been more honed in on today's threat than tomorrow's, so that some of this information is some stuff that I'm just now kind of rehashing and seeing again for just one of the first few times today. I could see Madison being included in the slight risk with that kind of line later in the day. Let's look at what the NAM is showing. Definitely for, I don't know about huge tornado potential, but I could certainly see some hail and gusty winds progressing on up in that direction. as they head that way. And don't give up on this event quite yet. LA Tours by Rain Maves. Weather Center is sorry for tomorrow. Satellite will be our best friend. Yeah, gonna have to use the star.nesdis.noaa.gov, right? That website I was showing you the other day. Taking a look at this, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Yeah, I mean, we got the NAM showing some storms on up in Madison as well. To be honest with you, I'm sure, especially with as trigger happy as the Storm Prediction Center has been, we'll see the marginal go like this. We'll see the slight go a little bit more like this. And in fact, let me pull it up where you can see it this time, because I'm not going to play that game again where I don't have it up on screen. There we go. The top line up here, that's where I think the marginal risk could go this far north. I think we could certainly see the slight risk go this far north. So to answer your question, I certainly think there could be a marginal risk a little bit further north, and then a slight risk into Madison. Just a weather guy. That's your account now. I abbreviated it earlier, but I remember now from when you've commented. Yeah, I mean, you could certainly see some storms late tomorrow. And to be honest with you, the NAM shows a little bit more in the separation of these cells, and Project Gladiator kind of to hone in a little bit more in your, in-depth discussion. I really think that we're just going to get so many storms in a row. You've got this line, and then you've got this line. That might cause a little bit more of a struggle in terms of storms kind of being strong. But you can certainly see the look of severe storms on here nonetheless. Let's take a look at the Cape. Certainly looks like we're going to have decent storm energy, 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram trying to make its way on up over this region. So I think we've got the storm energy there. In terms of capping, I mean, the cap's going to get broken overall in a lot of these zones. I mean, the storms on the NAM at this point we're showing right here, moving into this area, overall looking like there's going to be a fairly favorable environment for storm development. Dew points are going to be fairly decent tomorrow. I just think the messier these storms are and the closer they are together, the lower the tornado threat. So where the HRRR had this line and literally the next one right on its heels, that's probably more of a 5% type of deal. NAM, I can see these producing some tornadoes, and even these initial ones with some isolated spin-ups as well. I certainly think the NAM is a little more understandable for a 10% tornado risk. And then back down here, I mean, it's kind of interesting what's going to actually happen. We might not even get much of anything through southern Missouri, parts of northern Arkansas. This is a very suspicious area for severe weather development. So that's kind of a little bit of my input. And again, I'm not like the in-depth expert guy either. If I'm being quite honest with you, I've still got a lot to build on and learn as I kind of progress through building this channel. But with enough signs, I think we can tell. The second line will probably be both of these lines will probably be producing some gusty winds and hail, and then it's a little bit more conditional for the tornado threat tomorrow. I do think the 10% tornado threat is more understandable tomorrow. But you're talking about the 10% tornado threat today as well. Yeah, I just don't see those storms having much time before they become more in the way of line segments. And I mean, we can already see on the Storm Prediction Center's current outlooks for tonight, and this is the modeling trend that we've been getting all day long. Notice the cells later today and tonight. I mean, this is as we go towards 10-11 when storm initiation is. It already looks like these cells in a lot of cases are going to be, not little supercells. These are pretty big clusters of more hail, and you can see they quickly turn with some damaging winds. Again, I'm not saying there won't be isolated tornadoes. I think there's going to be multiple tornadoes tonight, probably more than 2, if I had to guess. Probably not enough to call this an outbreak, though. I think there's going to be a few tornadoes at least, but I think they're going to be weaker, and I don't think they deserve the 10% hatched risk that the Storm Prediction Center is kind of dropping down. Can I look at Johnson City for tonight? I certainly can, Michael Banks. Glad to see you on the stream. LA Tours, will you see thunderstorms tonight? I will get to you in just a second. Refresh me on your location for me, if you will. I think it's I know it's like Lakes, Wisconsin or something like that. I apologize for not knowing exactly where you are. So in Johnson City, you're looking just fine tonight, even though you're in the marginal risk. The NAM not showing much heading your way. If we look at current radar across this region, it doesn't appear like there's much in the way of coverage. You've got some storms that have been severe at times moving southeast of Richmond. We've got some storms. Let's see if any of these closer to Louisville and Lexington are severe this evening. Those probably won't drop down your way, but I mean, that's a good thing to look at here this evening, because this is something I didn't touch on quite as much at the very beginning of the stream. Let's go Severe thunderstorm warnings turn on tornado warnings as well. And yeah, I mean, I can see some severe thunderstorm warnings for some especially bigger hail out of these storms near Louisville, the Ohio River Valley tonight. Again, is this slight risk worthy? We'll see. We'll see if these live up to their Storm Prediction Center expectations here tonight. Let's see what else we've got. We've got a little bit of rain down there towards Greenville, South Carolina. Otherwise, it's dry across the Carolinas, Tennessee, back on over here. Got a little bit of shower coverage in parts of Arkansas, back on over towards Oklahoma. And again, I mean, there's stuff like this, too, that ends up inhibiting further development at times later or prohibiting further development, as the night goes on. So it's stuff like that we'll watch. Notice we've got less severe thunderstorm warnings up here over Nebraska, South Dakota than when I started the stream. We'll see what kind of clusterings we can get out of these. Yeah, I don't understand the 10% SIG either, LA Tours. I'm not giving up on this event necessarily, like you said you are. But I can understand why you've got the feeling of giving up on this event. There's been a lot of hype with different events lately from Storm Prediction Center. And then you've definitely, you see the people sitting there every video too. This is going to be a major tornado outbreak, etc. And that's not what this is. Let's read Project Gladiator and then Michael Banks. I see your next question. Definitely see some SIG torque potential, especially with the high conducive environment. But amongst the hurdles they will hop through, the risk will be overall definitely lower end, but possible. Yep, totally agree with you there on that. I think tomorrow, I think they're more justified in leaving the 10% significant tomorrow. Is there a chance I'm wrong? Yes. But I think it's more justified tomorrow than tonight. That's my personal opinion. At Leva Tours, let me know where you are in Wisconsin, and I'll get right to your question. But Michael Banks, let's look at the HRRR for you tonight while Eleva Tours tells me where he is located, or just an overall area of Wisconsin, even corner of the state. Tonight in Johnson City, I mean, I think you'll be okay. If you get anything, it'll probably be in the following hours here, and it looks to be pretty weak. I don't see anything, especially tornadic, developing. There's like 0 tornado chance out of these storms. And again, here we go. Weather Center Nazario, if you're still here, I'm telling you, slight risk. Look at this, slight risk. Where is it? Where are the storms that are going to develop in the slight risk? We've got a slight level 2 of 5. 40% of the way up the severe weather scale from the Storm Prediction Center here. Where are these storms? That's what I want to know, because I know we've got a few severe warnings over this area, but is this slight risk? When I think slight risk, I'm thinking at least some moderate coverage. I don't know. Is this going to be slight worthy tonight? I don't know about that. We'll see. 2024 has just sucked recently as far as severe weather events. Yeah, I mean, you're going to say that as a weather enthusiast, obviously wanting to cover more tornadoes, learn more from events like that, Project Gladiator. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are also happy that many of the events that have gone enhanced and moderate have not played out quite as intense as they were expected to be. So you know, but yeah, totally understand your viewpoint side of it as well. LA Vatour says 3 lakes in Wisconsin. Let's pull that up just a moment. 3 lakes, Wisconsin. Let's get to you there in the northern part of the state. And I think tomorrow you'll have to watch for some storms, but I don't think you're going to be really into the severe flavor of the storms necessarily. The storms are not going to be spicy, so to speak, that far north. And yeah, I think you're pretty much out of the worst. But your exact questions, will you see thunderstorms tomorrow night? I certainly think there will probably be some thunder up there. I mean, with the marginal risk probably likely to be extended further north. Look at that. I mean, as we head towards late tomorrow evening, I think there's going to be a mess of rain, maybe some isolated embedded thunder kind of making its way through these regions late tomorrow. So, yeah, I definitely think you'll have some thunder in 3 Lakes, Wisconsin. Probably isolated and brief if there is, but, probably some at least isolated thunder. Jake saw some vids, need to see your tornado. Yeah, they're in southern Wisconsin. I certainly think Milwaukee, I certainly think Madison, I certainly think you guys are going to get included in the slight risk if we continue to see the model trends we've had. Again, we'll see what the HRRR does this evening. I hope to make new not Storm Prediction Center, ONW severe scale graphics to post. You know, my severe scale that goes 0 to 7, I want to post those tomorrow on my opinions on tomorrow's event. Might even make one quickly after the stream and post one for this evening. In fact, I think I might have made one for this evening, and we can actually take a look at that. Yeah, I did make one for this evening. Let's go back on over to the custom severe graphics here. HRRR didn't show anything in Johnson City tonight. I totally agree with the HRRR. Michael Banks, I think you'll be just fine there tonight. Yeah, that's true. Always needing to watch myself so I don't get too hyped. Have the Storm Chaser brain, Project Gladiator says. Yeah, I feel ya. Let's get on over there back to live. And this is not going to be perfectly on screen as much as I would like it to be, okay? So just kind of bear with me. Full screen. This might be the one I want to. Custom severe graphics. Yeah, that'll work. We'll do it like this. Except this isn't the NASA Eclipse Tracker. That's something I did for another video. ONW. Severe scale. Okay, there we go. That's good enough. Here we go towards Monday. Or this is tonight. And I've got, you know, my scale goes 0 to 7. I've got a 2, 3, and a 4 over a lot of the plains. And my 4 is mainly hail-driven here for parts of central South Dakota, Nebraska, and northern parts of Nebraska. If I'm being honest, this 4 is just really to kind of agree more with the Storm Prediction Center. If I'm being honest, we should leave it more like this. Let's put it at a 3. And let's go to my explanation. Let's see what risk we think tonight should fall into as a collective group here on the stream. Increased risk for a few severe storms. All hazards may occur. Yeah, I think that's why I'm leaning back towards that 4 tonight, if I'm being honest with you, because I put hatched risks are more likely with a 4. So we're going to put it back at a 4 over this region for especially hail. And then, you know, if we were doing this based on tornadoes, obviously we wouldn't be really in as much of a concern tonight over this region. Weather Center Nazario, don't get you started on the tornado hype. Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I just randomly added you as like a moderator at some point, and I forget when it was. It was like a few weeks ago. I don't really have enough messages to where I need like a consistent moderation. But whenever you're here, I figure, you know, can't hurt to have you be able to delete stuff if 100% necessary. But anyway, let's go back on over to this, and let's see what questions anyone has. We've got about 20 people watching. What questions does anybody have? And I mean, it can be weather-related, preferably, right? But we can go into other topics. It would be beyond tomorrow's risks, too. I mean, we can talk about the storm evolution as a whole, and in fact, let's do that using the European trusty old model here. Go to my WeatherBell live slides, go on over to this, and I love my WeatherBell. Future radar. Here we go. United States, not South America, United States. There we go. Okay, now we've got some questions in the chat, actually. Going to start off my own live stream for this afternoon. Sounds good, Project Gladiator. If you're checking out, if that's what you're saying you're checking out, appreciate you being here. Yep, have a good night. Do you think I'll see any storms tonight? Michael Banks, no, I don't think so, not really. Any sense of what Ohio weather is like in the early part of May historically? I know it's a broad question, wondering if Ohio has severe weather in May. It is certainly possible to get severe weather in Ohio in May, and we'll take a look at a graphic here in a minute. I can pull it up from the Storm Prediction Center. Well, let me just get through this overall discussion of the next few days, and then we'll kind of take a look at that. But I do see your comment, Ann Flintstone, and I am not ignoring that. So let's get through the future. That's the 1 hour precipitation. Here we go, towards Wednesday afternoon. This will be the area to watch here down through the Ohio, maybe even the Tennessee Valley, for some briefly severe storms, especially capable of gusty winds and hail probably. Those will diminish. Then as we go towards Thursday afternoon, we've got a renewed piece of energy here, and this is going to have a little bit more cool air behind it. And this piece of energy going to spark off some storms. Terrible drawing. You get the point, though. Right here over parts of the South Central Plains into the Midwest as well. Some of these zones getting in on severe weather. Storm Prediction Center are already highlighting kind of this area for the 15%, and I kind of agree with that at this point. Looking at the European, looking at the lightning flash, look at that. It looks pretty convective during the night. Lots of storm energy, especially towards Texas, and we'll see especially if we can break any capping issues we have down there in Texas, then we'll be pretty golden. Ooh, there we go. Okay. And Flintstone, I want to address kind of your question here, and I want to show you some of the severe weather climatology for Ohio as we head through May, because it's not out of the question. It's not necessarily normal either to get a bunch of severe weather in Ohio in May. Certainly as we head towards June, July, the summer is often where we see the most severe weather up there. But we've already been seeing a lot of concerns, and honestly, Ohio has been hit the hardest almost so far this spring. You know, there was that big outbreak about a month ago up there. Surprise outbreak at that. Once again, another kind of mess up there, if I'm being quite honest with you, from the Storm Prediction Center. But let me pull up the severe weather climatology. Let's go to just overall severe weather. I'm pulling it up on my own end, and then we'll pull it up onto everybody's screen here in just momentarily. Let's do that. Okay, let's just head to mid-May and look at the kind of the full screen. This full screen. Okay, that works. Don't know what the W is down there in the bottom left. Maybe it means that I'm a W and we're having a W stream here. We'll leave it there. Anyway, severe probabilities in May. Great Plains is the hot spot, but it is not abnormal to see severe weather on over there towards Ohio. I mean, you've got the oranges, especially into the western part of the state. So if we're being honest here, we're probably Ohio, it is not uncommon to see some isolated severe weather by the time we head through mid-May. So that's something we'll be watching very, very closely. Let's head a little bit further ahead from that. Look at this as we head towards early June. Probably chances increase more in Ohio by the time we head towards June, and that's exactly what I was hinting at before we even looked at these graphics. Let's look at the 18th of June. Look at that. Late June is when we really start to see things ramp up in Ohio. So May, severe weather will probably be, chances will occur probably multiple times in Ohio. It's expected usually, and probably again this year, more towards the plains around that time. Still even into July, parts of that region getting in on severe weather. Also notice a local zone there in Tennessee, Georgia, the Western Carolinas, where tornado probabilities and severe probabilities are sometimes higher there in July. And then once the summer wraps up, you start getting kind of out of all that. And then look at this, you start to see probabilities just overall diminish as we get towards August. That's interesting, Jacob Lewis, excuse me. Thanks to everybody who's joining me this evening. Don't forget to hit that like button, share with family and friends as well. Weather Center Nazario can also vouch for what I'm about to say, too. It has been a slow couple of months once we got past snow. A lot of the viewership decreased, and I really appreciate everybody who is consistently tuning back in. I've got about 500 viewers who consistently come back and are given those views every time I post a video, and popping in during the live streams, hitting the like button, I'm sure a bunch of the time, the big live stream and video like button contributors. So I really appreciate all of you who do that. Looks like there'd be an embedded minor shortwave wrapping around the base of our low, seeing development pushing eastward through eastern and southeastern Colorado, if you're referring to this evening, which I 100% am thinking you are. Let's go back on over to WeatherBell and take a look at our GOES satellite imagery latest scans from this evening. And I want to look at some of the stuff we've gotten in the east today as well. Yeah, you can certainly see, look at that in eastern Ohio. Yeah, I've got a lot. Let's look at the final kind of visible scans. There are some bigger pockets of clouds getting going on there, and definitely some cumulonimbus forms, mid-level water vapor, showing kind of the same thing. There's our big storms that we've had so far today. Here comes this is what's going to probably produce starting in the next couple hours and through the night tonight into the Central Plains. Yep, nocturnal ignition highlighted on the HRRR. That's what we were kind of talking about at the start. I think that's why this zone is going to be especially hail-driven for the threats. And then infrared again, here we go. You can start to see some of the cells pushing on out of here. And again, very cool cloud tops on up here over South Dakota. Also want to take a look at some of the storms we've been getting in the east and what they look like on infrared and visible satellite. I know the day is done, but let's just go back a little bit. And you can really see where there's been storms. the Appalachian foothills are where they've been. So down here in Virginia, Maryland, parts of south central New Jersey, we've gotten that. We've also gotten these here in west central North Carolina. And have some of those pushed on down? Yeah, some of these have pushed on down into South Carolina as well. The northern parts, like I mentioned there. Places like, I believe, is Greenville getting in on some of those storms. It's been eastern Virginia that's been really getting hit with some of this severe convection again. But is this slight risk worthy over this, probably this whole region? Probably not. Squall line. Haven't left yet, but I'm in the same boat with viewership plummeting this season. Yep, I agree with you, Project Gladiator. Severe storm filmer squall line in Ohio Wednesday. Well, first of all, Ohio isn't necessarily in the biggest risk as we head towards Wednesday, and I just clicked the wrong thing, which I've been very good at doing on this stream. But yeah, I mean, Ohio, the southwestern part of it especially, knowing the Storm Prediction Center, will probably get like some orange in the middle of this at some point, highlighting a enhanced risk, right? Thinking a few folks will really get ahead of themselves for Wednesday. System will start to break down and we'll lose our sharp convective mechanisms that can bring the severe weather action. I agree with you, Weather Center Nazario. But how much money do you want to put on the orange that's going to be right here? Not necessarily, but I'm just saying, with the way the Storm Prediction Center's been lately, how much are you willing to bet that there will be a hatched risk, maybe even involving an enhanced risk somewhere in this zone, even if models don't uptrend much from here? Would I be surprised? Probably not. Let's look at the NAM and what it's showing for you, Severe Storm Filmer, because I know you got that question about a squall line, and I don't know if we're going to see a squall line, and it depends on what your definition of a squall line is, too. As the day goes on Wednesday, I don't see anything impressive on the NAM, which is normally our big, robust model. Is that really a squall line? It's just some pretty basic convective activity pushing along kind of the back end of this system. Severe weather season has been slow, should ramp up in May, question mark. Yeah, I would say it would ramp up more towards May, elevators, and that was kind of one of the things I discussed in my tornado season forecast, which is what I produced back about a month and a half now, maybe even few months, not a few months back, but like 6-7 weeks back at this point, starting to get almost to 2 months away. I produced that tornado season forecast. I do think towards May we'll see things wrap up. But yeah, severe storm filmer, I think it's too early to know if we'll get a squall line in Ohio on Wednesday, but chances are probably not. I mean, if this is what you got out of the NAM, that's going to be bringing some isolated 40-mile-an-hour gusts along it, and that's probably the extent of that kind of line. So we'll see what occurs. Again, tomorrow's enhanced risk, which is right here. This is Tuesday's enhanced risk. This is the one I agree the most with and can understand reasonably. Good, you could actually see that one that time when I was doing that too. Are you getting a level 2 or a level 3 Wednesday, says Sabrina. Good to see you here on the stream, tuning into me from Ohio, Crawford County, near Mansfield. That's where you normally join me from. Level 2 or level 3 for Wednesday. If you get in the level 2 Wednesday, I would be surprised. Well, no, excuse me. If you get in the level 3 Wednesday, I'd be surprised. I would not be surprised of a level 2, based on what the Storm Prediction Center has been doing a lot of lately. Because you're pretty much very much so on that dividing line of it already. I could certainly see them trying to extend it further northeast like so. We'll see what they do with that. But level 3, I don't know about in Ohio a level 3 on Wednesday. And I mean, Weather Center Nazario has it nailed down. Does this look too bad? No. And the current storms over this region and their slight risk isn't even performing that much either. So at this point, it's just kind of a wait and see with a lot of what happens. But anyway, I mean, if there's no more questions, we'll just kind of close down the stream, slow it down for tonight. I appreciate Weather Center Nazario, El Levator, Severe Storm Filmer, Project Gladiator, Jake's Awesome Videos, and Flintstone, Jacob Lewis, Michael Banks, and Just Hoops TV. Appreciate your message. Jake's Awesome Vids. I already mentioned you. Yeah, that's everybody who's been very involved in the chat this evening. I appreciate everybody who has been on tonight, and I hope everybody has a blessed night as always. Hope to be with you tomorrow. I'll probably post some sort of severe scale graphic probably tomorrow about what my thoughts are on the severe weather But for now, that's it for tonight. I hope everybody, like I said, has a blessed one. And thank you once again, Weather Center Nazario, for talking to me on the stream and behind the scenes. You have a great night, and everybody else does too. And stay safe if you're in the severe weather affected regions. Always have a way to receive alerts. Remember, the lowest, most interior room of your home or building, whether that's a basement, into your bathroom, into your closet without windows. Those are your options when you get under a bad severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. And remember, even if there's not a tornado that's going to touch down, why do you want to risk being at the window trying to get video when a tornado is going to hit? If you want to, be that bold and get the video of a tornado hitting your house, and you want to hope that that's going to happen, then set up a camera, set up a GoPro, okay? That's my advice for you, because it's not worth risking your life to stand at the window when there's a tornado coming. Again, there's probably not going to be too many tornadoes tonight based on my current opinion. I'm rambling, but nonetheless, just be ready for severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings. Know the lowest, most interior room of your house. Have a way to receive alerts, whether that be a notification, someone else's live stream, weather.gov, checking it frequently for your recent alerts. I think it could be really cool if National Weather Service had a notification system. But have a way to receive alerts, and make sure you got those settings turned on your phone. That's it for this. Everybody have a great night, and I'll see you next time.